Hello again. I sat in my room and I drew up a plan, but plans can fall through, as so often they do. And time is against me now, and there's no one else to blame. I'm quoting those lyrics because they're apt to overall training plans. I spoke last week about having a good routine, which I think is the fundamental to building fitness. And having an annual plan or a detailed annual plan is very difficult to implement. It's better to have some sort of framework that feeds into your routine, that feeds into the details of your routine and gives you some sort of structure. If you don't have an overall framework, then things are very ad hoc and it's difficult to build on your fitness throughout the season. But if you try and stick rigidly to an overall plan, well, it usually goes wrong in my experience, and I've coached many athletes over the years now. I've been a professional coach for since 2009, so that's 14 years. And prior to that, I obviously coached myself and helped other people in a more informal way. And what I've found is that even with professional athletes, plans fall through. Humans are not machines, and there's no guarantee that someone will build fitness in the way that they did previously. What worked in the past might not work in the future. So, but of course, that's all we've got to go on. So we have to make our best estimate, and that's where this framework comes in. And before I go any further, congratulations to Harry Toms, who I've been coaching for a while now, and he's just broken the 24-hour time trial record for under 20, which has been an amazing performance. He knocked a massive chunk off the old record. He's now recovering and catching up on sleep, and he's well under 20. He's had to go back to school this week. So anyway, congratulations to Harry. I'm looking forward to see what he decides to do next. So what I do is I create a phased structure of typically 6 to 8 week blocks, and if things aren't working the way that I expected, it's just a framework, so I can move the blocks about, or I can extend the block and reduce the duration of another block. It makes it quite easy to see the big picture and adjust the details accordingly. And I evaluate every 3 to 4 weeks. So if, say, I work with 6 week blocks, that's 2 3 week blocks, and I can check how progress is after each 3 weeks. So the first 3 weeks, see what's going on, change the next 3 weeks or leave it the same, check that, maybe extend to 9 weeks and reduce the next block to 3 weeks or something like that, just to make sure that we're getting the developments in fitness that we're looking for. And then we have a bigger evaluation after an event, or we might plan a practice event, so maybe a long weekend if it's a ultra endurance event, or if, say, you're doing a long ODAX. If you're training for something like Paris, or more likely London, Edinburgh, London now, which is coming up in 2025, then you might do a 400 or a 600 or something like that, see how you perform off that, and then you can extrapolate how you might perform in the longer event. It's not going to be the same, but it gives you a good test. So I would include these test or practice events at relevant points throughout the training season. And depending on the performance in these 3 week mini tests or the bigger practice events, then we can re-evaluate whether the plan's working as we hoped, or whether we need to make a sweeping change, or just make little tweaks and then carry on. And the benefit of having this framework is you can work on certain things, and each block builds on the previous block. Whereas if you just have a routine without any framework, you're making decisions maybe week on week, or think, oh well, that seems to be going quite well, I might keep doing that, or I'll change this because last year I felt like I needed this, or whatever. It's good to have a framework, but it's not good to have a massively detailed framework. So these blocks are progressive, and they're building on the previous block, and they're working on the least specific thing first. So a good routine for an endurance cyclist or an endurance runner might be to work on VO2 max, maximal aerobic power, your sort of 5-minute power, or your 5-minute pace initially. Extend that a little bit to doing some shorter FTP type efforts, and then build that to doing longer FTP and sweet spot and tempo type stuff, getting more and more specific as you get towards your event, which is going to be performed at probably your training zone 2, your endurance training zone, and even below as you get towards the latter stages where you just can't maintain the power or the pace. Or if your VO2 max is really good compared to your FTP, then you might want to swap it around the other way and focus on the endurance side first. So doing things like sweet spot and tempo initially for your first 6 weeks, then do a bit of FTP work and then a bit of VO2 max work, or even just mix them up, because there's no rule that says you have to go in some sort of linear progression of reducing intensity or increasing intensity. You can swap things about. And a good way to test is to look at your power duration curve and see whether your 5-minute power is very close to your 20-minute power, so your FTP is close to your VO2 max power. And if they're quite close together, you're obviously not going to be able to improve your FTP, because your FTP can't go higher than your VO2 max. Your 20 or 30-minute or 40-minute or 60-minute power can't be higher than your 5-minute power. It can be very close, but as it gets closer, you've got to improve your 5-minute power to give yourself a bit of headroom, and then the other stuff can come up. I mean, that's the theory. It doesn't always really work like that. I quite often do is have a test week where I do a 5-second, 1-minute and 5-minute test on one day, have a bit of a break, and then do a 20-minute or a 30-minute or 40-minute time trial a bit later in the week, and that gives you an idea of the power duration curve, and you can then make some sort of estimate of whether you need to work on your VO2 max or your FTP or whatever else. How you phase your season, whether you go for the high intensity training first or last, depends on climate as well. So you might go for a more traditional approach if you can train right through the winter and do quite a lot of endurance and volume during the winter. But if you live in, well, like some people I work with live in Canada or in Northern Europe, well, it's very difficult to do long rides or long runs in the winter. Your weekly and daily routines and your daily habits, all the good things that you should be doing, you just tweak what you do on each day of the week according to your framework and your focus for that particular 6-week block. Like I said last week, having a good routine is much more important than having a good overall plan. It's easy to draw up a plan, but executing it is what makes you fit. So you can get very fit by having a good routine and just making small changes where you think, oh, I've improved there, I could do with improving a little bit more there. Than you can by having a great overall plan and a routine that's ad hoc and your training's inconsistent. Routine is everything, consistency is everything, having a bit of a framework is helpful. I hope all that makes sense. I look forward to hearing your thoughts and your experiences, and I'll see you next time. Bye.